The blizzard brought ruin to our world. Our proud Chinese players became refugees. The server, union of our every thought and emotion, had been shattered. And today, on the Korean server, I encounter a Zerg on the ladder. I tried to block his natural initially, which works out. And after seeing his spawning pool in one gas, I assume he will be vulnerable for the next few minutes and would build a third base soon. So I decided to go for an adept blade attack. I must admit, I am not really good at this build order. I am also not quite sure how I should micro such an army. Anyways, it deals some damage to my opponent and makes me stand in a superior position afterward. I did make some mistakes, and with slightly better decision making, I thought I could just kill him. However, it is not the case here. I decide to go back and start tech up. I realize he is messing out Hydra and Roach, so I just built some Disruptor with High Templars as a response. With those AoEs, he couldn't kill me with his army. However, after the Lurkers came out, everything changed. Loathsome and terrifying, the corrupted monstrosities with lethal spines that pierced through their flesh burrowed and moved, and my valorous, exalted, warforged kin are shed mercilessly. As their agonized cries reached my ears, I sensed the unacceptable amount of loss of my most sacred treasure, my Vespine and minerals. Yeah, in the form of unit losses. And the war machine of our purifier brothers. Disruptor didn't work so well. Therefore, I decided to make some carriers. In fact, I had anticipated this scenario before, so I had been preparing for air transition for a long time. But I was not fast enough. Before the carriers reach enough numbers, I am dead. The hive mind now has conquered Babylon, and the Protoss had lost. And please don't misunderstand me after all. My opponent plays a decent game. The only thing that I find challenging is Lurkers and how effective they are. I apologize for forgetting to GG. So I sent him the message later after the game. We tried to verify that the GG indeed was sent after this, but we couldn't find it. So we're gonna have to believe this guy here. All in all, dear Harstem, the leader of our firstborn, is Lurker slightly overpowered? Or do I just simply, too, suck? By the way, my opponent seems to have an MMR of 3200, and I once had 3500 MMR on the Chinese servers, where I only played 2 carriers and immortal pushes against Zerg. Sincerely, your fan, Airtos. Airtos, playing on the Korean server in the Platinum League at 2900 MMR, wants to know whether the Lurker is imbalanced or if he sucks. And we're here to find out. That was one hell of a story, must I say, and an actual epic written here by Airtos. Remember the last time I read something this long was when I read the book about the prick that was attacking the windmills. Don Quixote, I think he's called in Spanish. I had an English translation, and the first 70 pages of the English translation are the translator explaining why it's so difficult to translate Spanish books to English. And him complaining how, saying, oh, it's hard and some translation good and others are bad. And he was like pooping on some of the previous translators and how they mistranslated some of the intricate little jokes that the Spanish writer meant. It's like, mate, after 70 pages of the translator's notes, I didn't even want to read the book anymore, so I put it back in the bookshelf, started playing StarCraft again. It's a disappointing experience. I honestly felt fairly similar about this epic that my dear friend Airtos just wrote. Didn't even really want to watch the replay anymore. I felt content after having read, his massive text. Don't really feel like we need to see the rest of the game anymore. Although there were some gems in there that made me still want to tune in. And there was one in particular which made me very happy. He said, and I paraphrase because I'm too lazy to pull it up, said something along the lines of, I scouted a gas and a pool, but just a single gas. So I thought his defense would be weak for the next few minutes. Now, I'm not entirely sure how he got to the conclusion that his defense would be weak. Every single Zerg in the entire world opens up with a pool and 1 gas. Like, what are they supposed to open up with? Are like 2 gases? Are Zerg supposed to roach rush on 2 base every game in order to be safe? Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, this is the most standard of build order openers, and you somehow think this is a sign from higher beings that it's time for you to pull out your Glaive Adept build order, which apparently you're not very good at. You also managed to delay your cybernetic score by more than 10 seconds. I'm not quite sure what happened in this early game. All I know is that you're going to be supply blocked at 23 out of 23, and your cybernetic score is 8 seconds late, without anything having happened in this game. Did you also say you tried to go for... What is this build? Holy crap. Good lord. Is this the guy that called the Zergs monstrosities and then opens up with a build order like this? Like, this is the actual monstrosity here, my friend. Holy cow. Gateway, the same time he starts his warp gate, chrono boost his warp gate immediately, then goes into a twilight. Now, this means that this gateway is going to be done so long before warp gate. It is insane. He could probably produce 2 units out of it. However, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think my man Airtos here is not going to build a single unit out of this gateway, because this always happens, and it drives me absolutely nuts. And even if he does make another unit out of this gateway, it would also be incorrect, because you want another gateway instead. This is a lose-lose scenario that Airtos here has created for himself. Who's also going for some fantastic scouting here, by the way. Completely unaware on whether his opponent is taking a third or not. But he did manage to get that information, because he saw a single gas in a pool. Maybe he thinks that multiple pools provide Zerg with more production. Maybe I've been looking at it wrong. I thought that the big tell for Airtos was the fact that it was just a single gas. But maybe Airtos looked at this and thought, only one pool? What an idiot. How is he going to produce enough queens with only a single spawning pool? Yeah, this might just be an ignorant Protoss player that doesn't know that if you have one tech structure as a Zerg, every larva can now turn into the unit that the Zerg tech provides. So if you build a spawning pool, every hatchery becomes a Zergling machine, basically. Might want to try and save this natural, or this third base. This is indeed... What did he say? I'm gonna get a quote here. I decided to go for an adept blade attack. I must admit, I am not really good at this build order. If there ever was like a Grammys for the understatement of the year, Airtos would win it. I'm not really good at this build order. My man, you have absolutely no clue how this build order works. Okay? When I play this particular build order, I hit at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, which is right now, with 12 adepts, a prism, glaives, 38 workers, a third gas mining, and a robobay on the way. On the other side of the map, your opponent would have had 11 links. You haven't even finished your prism yet. You do have a quicker third base than I do. But you also have 6 less adepts. And we're already 25 seconds later. Which is fairly impressive, honestly. Sometimes I do believe that just doing random things... After you do your one gate expand opener and then just doing random things might actually be better than trying to copy something meta, because this is such a weak version of the glaive adept attack, and the Zerg most likely is going to be somewhat familiar with a glaive adept attack. I say that, and the response from the Zerg here is 2 Evo chambers, a roach warren, a lair, and 11 more drones. Not quite sure if this guy got the memo on how to beat glaive adepts, to be honest. Matching the adept count with links, guys, is not the hard counter. It's not good enough, alright? Adepts, contrary to popular belief, actually do beat links in a one-on-one fight. They two-shot them. Now, there are spores in every single base, in case the oracles do end up showing up somehow, some way. This game is now officially over, I guess, or at least... This third base is toast. Zerg player decides to take a different third base. He's like, well, I have 52 workers. How bad is it really if I lose this base? Well, usually it would be quite bad, but... Honestly, given the passiveness of these adepts, it might actually be okay. I'm kind of fine with this in a weird way, honestly. I really am kind of fine with this. Does he finish this shade? He does. These are not necessarily great traits anymore. The moment there's more than 4 roaches, glaive adepts fall off really, really hard. You don't really want to fight that. You want to fight drones and links majority of the time. Because now you just end up taking crappy fights. Still gonna take out so many drones though. Just because the damage output of the Zerg is not good enough. But yeah, you don't really want to fight the roaches. You want to fight the drones in this case. I actually do believe that Airtos is doing an okay job at that. Still has the Prism around as well. Has a nice savings account as well. Been saving for the college fund of his kids. Airtos has a lot of kids. That's why he's saving so much. He has 25 kids. He's saving 100 minerals for each kid. Does spend a little bit. Well, now goes into the main base again. I love that he started producing probes once more as well. And actually has kind of been macroing behind this. There's a legendary SimCity as well. Managed to not create a full wall in any of these spots. There's a hole here, there's a hole here, there's a hole here, there's a hole here, there's a hole here. 4 holes in a wall. He's still going to clear a lot of these drones though. I always wonder what he's actually doing at this point. Is he just straight up looking at the adepts? Because the micro on the adepts isn't great. Why are we looking in the dead space? Oh, there's a new base there. Let me warp in more adepts to right click it. It's like at this point you're so far ahead. There's a couple of things you can do. You can either just tell your opponent to leave and just kill every single drone he has. Or you can go back, research storm +1, and then go again once you have that and simply win the game. Why is this guy's camera moving so weird? It makes no sense. It really makes no sense. Well, this hatchery is going to be under some heavy fire. I can't believe this adept attack has been lasting for... Well, it feels like 2.5 minutes now. And it's still dealing damage. Okay, finally it stops. His drone's still being chased. Now, let's take a look at the overall situation here, okay? So here our Protoss player is up 13 workers. Has 1,700 minerals in the bank. Enough for the college fund of 17 of his many children. Storm basically done. Charge on the way. Can start producing immortals. Already has an immortal. And is fighting against a pure roach army. Airtos himself describes this as a superior position. I once again think this is a bit of an understatement. This truly is the age of the understatement with Airtos. Because I think that this is almost unlosable at this point. This is as if you're in a gladiator 1 versus 1 fight. You've just stabbed the guy in the stomach. You've cut off both of his legs. And you're like grilling them on a fire. That's the phase we're in right now, you know? The guy's still alive. You offer him a piece of his leg. He's like, no, thanks. Not that hungry right now. Kind of bleeding out. You're just sitting there next to him. He's like, hey, I think I might be winning this gladiator fight. And everyone in the Colosseum is getting proper bored because this guy's just grilling some meat for hours. Takes hours, I bet. And grilling a fat leg as well. Never actually grilled a leg. That would be a weird admission to make as well if I had. Not sure if this would be the proper platform to do that on. Okay, I love this. This is like, okay, I'm so far ahead right now. My opponent has no legs anymore. I'm just going to add a Stargate, go into my late game transitions, second robotics facility, 4 more cannons in case he manages to pull 30 roaches and 15 lurkers out of his high hat in the next 5 seconds. Like, he's so far ahead right now. But he's giving his opponent some opportunities, you know? He's taking a bite of the leg and he leaves his sword on the floor. The other guy's like crawling towards it, grabs him, starts trying to stab him in the nose or something. It's not quite working still, but slowly but surely the Zerg is getting back there, you know? Slowly but surely. Very slowly, may I add. At any point, I still think Airtos can probably move out as he has a composition that actually fights. He has Disruptors, pretty much the hard counter to the Roach. He has Storm, which is also very good against high Roach numbers. Archons for some meat shields, and he can add more and more Immortals. Prism is being added. The gateway count is absolutely fabulous. The one thing we're lacking are upgrades, but those are honestly on the way as well. And the Zerg doesn't really have upgrades either. Supplies are even against a Roach Hydra player. His bases are, well, I guess completely secure, as there's 6 cannons here. And I think the Zerg would literally need to throw its entire army into that base. Still lose like 7 or 8 roaches into that particular position. Out expanding the Zerg simultaneously, 78 workers, and adding Void Rays in as well. Now that's a little bit confusing. I think I've already... No, okay, I didn't see a fleet beacon. I thought I saw a fleet beacon already, but I guess it's just the Stargate that I saw. I wouldn't... So, once again, there's 2 things you can do in this case, okay? There's 2 options. Option number 1 is you attack and kill your opponent. There's many ways in which you can do that, and I will explain to you the most optimal way in which you can do that, okay? How I would have done it. I would have sent 5 zealots towards this base. I would have sent 3 zealots towards this bottom base, and I would have stood on top of this general ramp with my entire army, waiting for my opponent to either send large portions somewhere else, then you can move forward, or to engage into your position to remove your army from that threatening spot. It's really difficult to deal with that type of multitask as a Zerg player. That is a very fair option. That's a very fair way to approach this fight. Another thing you can do, because there are no banelings, is keep everything together and just use your storm on top of your opponent's army and just kind of take it from there. If you storm your opponent's army completely, you should be fine. Now, actually, we have another option, and that is not fighting, as your opponent is completely all in. Your opponent has 73 workers, which means he's down 12 workers, and he's on a roach army. He has like 4 hydras, 7 hydras with it, which he can use. But it's not like hydras are absolutely brilliant just by themselves. What you can do instead is you tech into carriers and you win the game with your carriers. Get like 3 Stargates, all of that good jazz, blah, 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 blah. Congratulations, you've won the game. 3 options. Now, what does Airtos do instead? First storm kills 1 hydra. A moves in. Second storm is pretty decent. I'm okay with it. Disruptor shot kills 6 or 7 of his own zealots. Decent storm hitting zealots and roaches about evenly. I feel like when I say decent storm, that's being a little bit deceptive. Because they weren't actually good storms. But what I mean with a decent storm when I'm watching Airtos play is that a good storm doesn't have negative value. So if at any point in time a storm hits 1 Zerg unit and deals 10 damage and doesn't hit a zealot, that is a good storm because it's a net positive. I know the bar is very low when it comes to that for Airtos, but so far his control has disappointed me so much that I think this is where I put the line. So that the one Disruptor had negative value, that was a bad Disruptor, but all the other Templar I think have dealt more damage to the Zerg army than they have dealt to the Protoss army, so that's solid. Honestly, it's kind of winning this engagement. Can just warp in anything and continue A moving in. I'm not so sure why we have so little gas. Okay, there's no gas mining. Well, there's very little gas mining at the 4th. Should be enough gas here. I'm very surprised by this, because he does have a lot of Templar. Now, this is really where a small Zealot run by would help so much, because then you force your opponent to attack into your position often. Once again, more storms coming in. Can just wait till you're maxed out and go once more. Or stand on top of this ramp. This is working perfectly. Oh, this game is completely over. Once again, good storms. Good storms all around. Only hitting his opponent's army. Not really dealing any damage, but you are trading slightly better than your opponent, or maybe even significantly better than your opponent at this point. Kind of like that. Now this was a lot of move commanding, but probably still... Negative Disruptor shot. Probably still okay. I don't entirely see how you're gonna lose the incoming fights. I guess throwing away your Disruptors for free is a start. Not using Storm anymore altogether. Look at his Immortal going ham. The Immortal has dealt how much? 310 damage to this one extractor. 307 damage to that one extractor. Forced a recall. Overall, probably still an okay trade. Resources lost probably was somewhat close. However, your unit count did kind of get reset and you lost most of your Templar. Your Zealot run by was a little bit late, but you still have 91 workers. You have 14 gateways. Technically still impossible to lose this game. If that's going to be the same in practice, I don't know. Good Disruptor hit once more. Like, roaches really freaking suck. And micro at the lower levels also isn't quite brilliant. So dodging these Disruptor shots hasn't been going too hot either. This game honestly feels completely over still. I'm very curious what's about to happen. I can't quite recall this part in the Imbalance Complaint form where he's fighting against a pure roach army with 93 probes against 74 workers. He's getting somewhat beneficial trades as he's out expanding his opponent, simultaneously attacking. What's like building Void Rays makes no sense though. This isn't really preparing for an Airtos transition either, is it? He said he was preparing for an Airtos transition, but building Void Rays prepares your opponent for an Airtos transition. It doesn't prepare you. It makes your Airtos transition worse because Void Rays freaking suck at everything they do. Except in the very late game when they can fight against Corruptors. They might be quite useful. There's a lot of Disruptors in this army. Really do believe this game to be completely over still. You could just move out when you're maxed. You could also not do that and wait until your opponent has a new type of tech. In this case, the Lurker. It's an interesting call. Not a call that I necessarily agree with. Most of the time when I call something interesting in IOTIS, it is not a positive thing. Well, first person might be useful here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. What? Honestly, not that bad. I had expected so much worse. I thought now we're gonna get it, but he microed back. This was a fine engagement as far as engagements go in this game. Now you just gotta run and counterattack maybe? Just use your Void Rays? Nah, there's enough anti-air, so you can't really do that, I guess. I think you just counterattack at this point. Like, there's nothing at home here for the Zerg. Everything is here fighting you. This is the one thing you probably shouldn't do. This is an absolutely classic mistake. People... Oh, okay, this was painful. Look at that. I wanna have another look at just how bad this trade is, okay? And why this trade is so bad. And why this was garbage. So this was 180 supply against 170. And at the end, it is 173 supply against, well, about 120. And this base is still gone. Now, this is something that Protoss players at lower levels very commonly do. Especially when they have a lot of Disruptors in their army. The Disruptor is a siege unit. You shouldn't forget this. A Disruptor is a unit that gets a lot of value over time. If you can use it again and again and again, you can really whittle down someone's defenses. Now, giving up a base when you're up a base against a Zerg is completely fine, especially if you have 5k in the bank. It is okay to do that. What you're doing is you're just throwing 8-7 Disruptor balls, then you wait, and then you do the same thing again. You're gonna lose this base anyway. Like, move commanding your army into the Lurkers is just going to make the Lurkers more useful. It will not make your Disruptors more useful. And the only way you're breaking this army with the army that he previously had is with the Disruptors. So you're looking at an army thinking, okay, my main strength is the Disruptor. They fire once every 18 seconds. Let me move command in. Like, the logic there just simply, it doesn't compute. It makes no sense at all. This also is a retreat path that I'm not quite sure if I would be taking that one. But then again, who am I? Who am I? Here comes some nice Disruptor shots. Poof. This would also be a prime time, by the way, to send in a little bit of a Zealot run by. Like, just, you have 14 gates, warp in 10 Zealots, send them across the map. It is really difficult to deal with Zealots if you're rallying all your units across the map as a Zerg player. This Zerg is uber poor as well, so it should be good. There still is not a single carrier in production. We're still working off, I think, a single Stargate here. Nice preparation for the Stargate late game, my friend. Just having a... Maybe he meant mentally prepared. He like Googled the hotkey for the carrier or something, so in case he needs it this game. I swear that he said that he was prepared for the late game. No, I'm gonna check it. Yeah, here we go. Therefore, I decided to make some carriers. In fact, I had anticipated this scenario before, so I had been preparing for the air transition for a long time. You guys tell me what preparation he has been making, but I mean, I guess he had the +1 done, but he's working off a single Stargate. I feel like the air transition is long overdue at this point as well. He's been floating 9k resources for the past 4 minutes. Now finally he's adding his second Stargate. This is not prepared well in advance. This is saying, oh crap, I lost a massive fight. I need to do something different. Like, that is actually the opposite of preparation. Preparation means that you have something ready, like anticipation. You have something ready before the thing becomes a threat. You start the transition after there already is a threat out on the map, an army that you can deal with. And the funny thing here is that this is not an army you can deal with because the units are good, but because you have not enough control. Your control over your units, over your current army, is too poor. And as a result, you need to transition. Now, if you know that, I would be way more willing to shoot a Stargate transition a bit quicker, to go for it faster, pull the trigger on that, if you know that you can't control an army like this with this much AoE, because it just hasn't been great. It really hasn't been. I mean, you're making losing trades against an army that consists of 20 roaches, which by itself is quite impressive, because the roach is just a terrible unit once armies are maxed. It is garbage against AoE, deals very little damage, it dies quickly against everything, and yet you keep managing to have poor traits against it. It is actually quite impressive in a way. Here comes the well-prepared air transition with the single Stargate. No +2 yet starting either, despite still floating about 4,500 resources. Absolutely no problem. Not a single unit has been sent across the map to harass. I don't actually think I've ever seen multi-control group usage yet. So far, I think he actually only uses F2. This observer is the only unit that... I mean, it's probably in the control group or it's in the F2 group. It's just... Yeah, you see, it's being selected. It definitely is. This is being selected. It was earlier, at least. Yeah, it's always being selected. I think he only uses F2. I've never seen this with a toss. An exclusive... That means there's never a unit in the wall either. Oh, here comes the anticipated air transition. Man, that was one hell of an air transition. That was sick. He really was mentally prepared for losing that one carrier there. My man is legit losing to pure Roach Hydra, despite having Void Ray Templar Disruptor. I didn't even know this was possible. I thought that Hydras would poop themselves just seeing the Disruptor show up or seeing this many Templar. Like, you really need to try hard to lose these fights. See, you just storm everything and it's always fine. Like, Hydras have no HP, Roaches die so quick. It is uncanny. Melee upgrade here for the Zerg. Also an interesting call. This move-in is also an interesting call. Oh, Disruptor. Clears it. Nice. This is a good move. Nice one. Actually dealing with the threat appropriately. Very cool. F2ing his entire army to the top side. Still has plenty of cash in the bank as the air transition now truly starts to kick off. You know what's funny here is that I look at this situation and I think to myself, yes, the Protoss army... Or sorry, the Protoss eco sucks, but his army is really big. And his army is still kind of good as well. Like for this, well, I guess these two Disruptors that are stuck here are not really helping. But just the Templar and the carrier, Void Ray, if you clear the Hydras, there's no anti-air. It should technically be possible. It's difficult. You need to control your army. And so far, he has been trading 6k resources worse than his opponent against pure Roach Hydra. So we know that efficient trading hasn't been his forte, so to say. Disruptor moving forward. Can we get a shot? Can we get a shot? No, we can't. Can we get a storm? Can we get a storm? No, we can't. Can we get a prismatic alignment for the roaches? No, we can't. More storms? Okay. That's something. That's an interesting last storm there. I mean, technically a win in a fight, but at this point the Zerg has eco again and simultaneously staking out your base, and as you use F2 every single time you do something, there's not going to be anything there, is there? Zerg still has 90 larvae as well. I have a feeling this game might actually be over. I believe this is a magnificent game. This is... You know what this was? You know what this was? This was a Protoss player misidentifying a weakness of the Zerg, playing a build order that he has no clue how to execute, accidentally being up so far that it becomes impossible to lose, and then the Protoss player getting outplayed for 18 minutes straight. Like, legitimately, for 18 minutes straight, just getting outplayed again and again and again and again and again. Just the entire time, no matter what he does, he's getting outplayed. Like, his army is literally always out of position. He doesn't harass once. He's losing bases left, right, and center. And then he looks at the game and thinks to himself, the only reason I lost this is because of imbalance. Mate, you're losing to someone massing Hydras. This is not even a composition. Like, this is a unit tester for EO at this point. No GG. But according to Airtos, he did message after the game. And as Airtos has been nothing but truthful so far to us, we will believe him. Definitely said GG. Now, he might have been truthful. The gameplay was truly, well, kind of horrific, honestly. The Glaive Adept build order was terrible. It really was bad. You played it due to not understanding how the regular metagame in PvZ plays out. Despite that, you deal a lot of damage, get really far ahead, get multiple types of AoE, which you know how to use, but also you don't know how to use it effectively. I'm not quite sure how to play. Like you storm, but for whatever reason, you don't ever really win fights once your opponent gets maxed out or once the fight happens too quick. I'm not even sure if the lurker was the problem or if the thought of the lurker was really the problem. It's like, oh, lurkers are scary, and you just forgot that you had to storm your opponent's hydras, or you forgot you had to use your disruptors. Like, people see the lurkers and they just completely freak out. I feel like that's what happened. You're like, you were fighting against the ghost of the lurker more so than against the lurker in my mind. There was one absolutely awful fight where you lost all of your disruptors, but even after that, you had plenty of opportunities. You had the entire game to transition into a composition that you could have controlled. I mean, mass carrier, if you can't control that, you have to be legitimately brain dead. So I feel like you had so many opportunities to redeem yourself in this game after your many failures because of your fantastic early game or the Zerg's horrible early game. You didn't take any of those, and that can only lead me to one conclusion, and that is that you suck. I'm sorry, my friend. I loved your little essay you wrote to me, but you suck. Stick with Immortal All-Inning and 2 carrier rushing Zergs, because this macro game, this macro life, it ain't for you, brother. It ain't for you. All right, that's going to be it. Got some windmills to fight. Thanks all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this episode of IOTIS. If you did, don't forget to like, but subscribe to the channel, and I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Adios, my friends. Adios.